Yeah, sitting at home, homeschooling or going to a school or whatever, and getting all this knowledge does not build confidence. A couple of years ago, I decided I wanted to build an aluminum boat, a jet boat, from scratch out of scrap metals, scrap aluminum. And so I studied it on YouTube. Maybe I looked at 50 different YouTubes. And I told someone I was buying an aluminum welder and I was going to make a boat. And they said, how long you been welding aluminum? I said, well, I've never welded aluminum. They said, well, how are you going to do it? And I said, well, I'm going to go out and get one. I've looked at some YouTube, so I can do it.
And so that's stated at Holiday Inn Express.
And so I started welding my aluminum boat up, and I got about, 2 weeks into it, and someone came over that can weld aluminum and looked at it and said, I said, what? He said, that's not going to hold up. Take a piece of aluminum and it falls apart. I was making little beads on top of it. It wasn't penetrating well enough. I'd never welded aluminum, never even seen anyone weld aluminum. I thought I could do it, but I couldn't. So I had to go and buy a special tool that you could grind. And I ground 10 pounds of aluminum weld out of that thing and didn't have any confidence at all at that point. What did I do? I tackled it again, and I kept at it. So after about 6 months, I got my boat welded together, and I've headed out running, jumping logs, and everything else. Now I have a whole lot of confidence. So sometimes it's false confidence that we get just from because we think we know it all, and then there's real confidence that comes from putting it into practice.
I would argue that your confidence wasn't in your ability to weld aluminum, but in yourself, because you've built everything from wooden sculptures to cabinets to metal tools to trailers and a sawmill, and you have the capacity to figure it out. That sooner or later you're going to whoop that thing. And I think it was more like 18 months than 6 months. But
no, it was a total year from the time I started to the time I put it in the water with it being successful.
Okay. Well, the
was that when you dumped Pearl out of the boat accidentally?
Yeah, I lost her out of the boat. Threw her out in the river.
That's a great story. We have to do.
Pearl doesn't think so.
I figured it out.
Okay, we have to tell this story. This is one of the best stories. But Mom is the one that has to tell it. She had us all in stitches in the office.
He likes to show out. That's the bottom line. And he got that new boat, and boy, he was throwing me everywhere. And he didn't have sides on it where I could hang on. And I fussed about it. You throwing me out. You can't just turn on a whim. I don't know when you're going to turn, and there's no way for me to hang on.
I like to hit the waves and jump like this.
I mean, he was just tearing up the river. Anyway, we stopped to have us a sweet little picnic, which is the reason I like going. And we sat on, we talked about the animal prints and all this kind of stuff, and I noticed a bush. And so in the meantime, a big wave came, and it washed the boat way up on the sand. And so when we got ready to go, we pushed and shoved and pushed and shoved. It was a lot of sand. And then he whirled around, and the way that kind of boat works, what's it called?
Jet boat.
A jet boat. It sucks in water and throws it back on the backside. And so I'm the one that's always in the water because I swim real well, and he didn't like getting wet, and it's cold water. So I'm in the water.
You sound like a
I told you she tells it better.
I'm in the water. When we put the boat in, I'm the one that's always in the water.
I'm tougher, I'm
I
stronger.
like water.
Yeah.
So anyway, he's in there, and the sand's going everywhere, and I'm pushing, trying to get the boat off. And I get one leg in, and he looks back to see my one leg in. And I realize it's still stuck, so I get out and shove it again, and away he goes down the river. So I thought, time to teach that booger a lesson. So there was a bush on the right where we were. So I just hid behind the bush. I knew he would eventually get down the river. He went so far down the river, I couldn't hardly see him without my glasses. I couldn't even hardly see the boat anymore. And then I could barely see it swing going into where we were, to load up.
Yeah.
And when he did, he looked over his shoulder, and I wasn't there.
I'll tell you what, I never felt so bad in my life. I made it so It's just empty feeling. I thought, did she have a life jacket on? Because it's a big wide river, Tennessee River, like Kentucky Lake. And so I went back.
I
up
can
the
swim
river,
really well.
and I was trying to remember because I had done some didos coming up the river. Went out wide and came back, and I was trying to remember where did I cross?
Where was he being a bad boy?
What side was I on? And I just was in total panic, just empty, all the blood ran
Oh man.
out of my limbs.
Meanwhile,
And
she's
I-
having the time of
I
her
was
life.
Lost my mom.
I was looking like this, looking like this.
He was going real slow and careful when he was looking for me in the river.
Run over, you know. so I was trying to remember where we had stopped on a sand bar.
I was hiding behind the bush looking at him.
And so
I was laughing so hard I couldn't hardly stand
I got the
up.
feeling like maybe I'd passed that point, but I'd turn around and go back again, and I started thinking, how am I going to explain this? What are you saying, sir? You threw your wife out of the boat and don't know where?
I have to say, I could see him getting a little close, and he's standing up, going real slow, holding on, and he just looked so bad. I felt sorry for
She
him,
liked
so
it
I
better than
stepped
flowers.
out. And when I stepped out, I thought he was fainted. He just went down. He went down, sat down.
What's so funny is I remember after that happened, for months afterwards, you were so like affectionate towards her. You were smothering her in hugs all the time, just like, what can I do for you, Deb? How can I love you today? It was sweet.
This was just last summer.
Yeah.
Then he went back and fixed the boat and put sides on
Yeah,
it like
put
I
the
told him
railings
to
for
start
over.
with.
Yeah.
Railings for her to hold on to now.
When she came into office to tell it the first time, she was laughing so hard we couldn't even figure out what she was saying because and the dad came in and told it, and he was like, it wasn't funny at all, which made it a lot funnier.
That's
Remember what
awesome.
we were talking about.
Confidence.
Confidence.
Okay.
Ruined his confidence for a
I
while.
took his confidence away. That's what happened.